Well, welcome to HPK Provident Advisors Friday Live. Of course, this is when the partners of one, two, sometimes three partners of HPK Provident Advisors located in Greater Pittsburgh and in Florida on the East and West Coast, actually. We get on Facebook Friday afternoons, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Friday, September 12th, 2025. And I am honored and thrilled to be joined by David Harper.
Thank you very much. It is great to be here. Sorry that it's been a while since I've been on the cast. I've left you in capable hands.
Well, I guess everybody can have their own opinion on that. Generally, what we are doing is each day during the week, we put out some social posts around. We talk about the markets, financial planning, news topics. So we post those during the week. We summarize them, get into a little bit more details on Fridays during Friday Live, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook. So we'll cover a few of those. The other partner of the firm, there are three of us. Mike Kutch couldn't join us today. He is a chartered financial analyst and the portfolio manager for our group and for our clients. On Mondays, he puts out the week ahead in the markets. We could touch on some of that. I'm not as good on that side of the portfolio construction as Mike is, but we can touch on a little bit of that. And then let's see here. We had a post. Let's see here, talking about the cost of college, which is something I'm acutely aware of at this point in my life. And then we talked a little bit about the backdoor Roth. We're going to talk about that each Thursday of what we have been doing. And so yesterday, which was 9/11, of course, we did talk about the qualified business income deduction. So we'll cover each one of those in a little bit. David, you want to cover one or two of those topics, or
I will chime in. I know the Business Weekly, we are near market highs. We did hit market highs. We've been anticipating, and I believe the whole market has been anticipating a federal rate cut and has been chomping at the bit for the last rate cut was what, last December? Last November. Okay. And we've been waiting for a rate cut. And it appears that the economic data that came out this week for the inflation in August appears not to have has appeared not to have derailed the idea that the Fed could cut rates here in September, as early as next week.
Yeah, and we'll see. Mike is going to talk a little bit of that about that on Monday in his post, and I think the theme there is good news, bad news. Bad news is that it appears inflation ticked up a little bit, which might not be great. But the good news of that is maybe that encourages the Fed to reduce rates sooner than later, which would be positive. So we're kind of in a wait and see period. I can say, in talking with Mike, that he's raised the cash overall in the portfolios that we manage for our clients for that wait and see. If the market continues to go straight up, potentially we deploy that. If not, then we've got some, a little bit of an extra buffer in there with cash, and potentially if we get a rebound some point in the future, if there is a downturn and then we get a rebound, then we got some assets that maybe pick up things at lower prices.
I've often heard a wise person say, no tree grows straight to the sky. Here in Florida, our palm trees sort of bend to the wind. It doesn't go straight to the sky. Maybe some of those royal palms in Fort Myers on that boulevard are so pretty, but when they have those hurricanes, they start to lean. They have to be replaced. So the long and short of it is the market's going to have a pullback, and Mike usually really likes to use that cash position to buy on those dips, and he's done a pretty nice job of that. I would venture to say.
Well, we remain, we were believers in asset allocation. We make adjustments along the way. But for clients, what we do is through our financial planning, we set up a portfolio, stocks, bonds, combinations based on their risk preferences, their timeframes. And then we make adjustments. So what we're really talking about is adjustments. We had a post on Tuesday about kind of estimating college costs, and that has been a moving target over the years, the difference between public and private universities. And now that cost, David, unlike trees don't grow to the sun, it appears that the cost of college is growing to the sun. So,
ouch. That is a major expense for many parents as they try to assist their children in getting them the education that they want for their children. Wow, there's different ways to try to do that. There had been a long strategy on trying to anticipate what the cost of college is. And then when the child is born, within the first 2 years, save so much money to reach that agenda. Unfortunately, college expenses have outpaced inflation. And
significantly.
So expenses are way beyond, and it becomes almost frightening to try to go that approach. And I think a more valid approach that we've utilized for a number of years is save as much as you can, save what you can allow, and do what you can with that. Try not to pay for all of the college expense or pieces, but what do you think of the difference of that strategy, Brian?
Well, it really comes down to the individual in the sense that, when we're doing our planning for folks that are hoping to have children or do have young children, we kind of start out with, what are your values? Is this of critical importance to you that you provide for your child's education? Of course, it's important. But then we got to prioritize a whole bunch of things. Living now, paying for college in the future, and then hopefully maybe retiring someday. And so, I always say this, and you'll see some posts on this in the future. I had a professor in college. I studied economics, and he said economics is actually very simple. It is the study of the efficient use of limited resources. And of course, one of our most limited resources we have is our money. And so we sit back and say, okay, you've got limited resources. Let's make the most efficient use based on your values and your goals. And so we kind of start there. It is incredibly expensive. We do know, and it's often said, I've heard this many times throughout my career, you can finance college, but you can't finance retirement. So you got to kind of look into that. So it really starts with limited resources, what the goals are, what the values are in that particular situation. Then we start to allocate those resources. It's very, very difficult to, it's going to be very, very difficult to finance all of it for sure. So, but there are a lot of different ways to do it. Right? There are scholarships, and there are a lot of different programs and grants and scholarships, and it's incredibly complicated. I have 2 in college right now, and I personally went the path, save as much as you can. But even with all of that planning, once I got there, I didn't realize how complicated it is. Anyway, but there's an estimator on there. The Wednesday post was about the backdoor Roth, which is
one more thing about the college thing is it is a topic to discuss ongoing, and each case is particular. It's specific to your situation, and perhaps a couple of years in community college or public college as opposed to private makes a huge difference in the cost after graduation in regard to having to pay back. So
But that's something that, again, that's part of the planning. And those are things that we could talk about. The actual cost of college, 15, 18, 10 years, 1 year, 2 years from now is darn near unknowable. What we know, it is breathtaking and it requires a lot of planning. Wednesday was the backdoor Roth, which is an interesting strategy often used by higher net worth folks. David, you got the thoughts, preferences, observations on the backdoor Roth?
The one thing to keep in mind is a Roth is a gift from the government. We don't often get gifts from the government that pays so well. And thank you, Senator Roth, to establish this, because he realized he needed to give incentives to people to plan for their retirement. So to be able to have a retirement plan that grows tax-free within the certain limits and to take out tax-free is a pretty sweet deal that everyone should be able to take advantage of. Well, because of the Congress being Congress, you didn't open it up to everybody. They put income limits on it. Well, is there a loophole? Is there a way to get around that income limit? And that's the backdoor Roth. Sweet. So, Brian, what do you think of a backdoor Roth?
Well, I'm going to go back to we let our planning kind of lead this, whether this makes sense or not. To David's point, though, there are income limitations on who can put money into a Roth IRA. By the way, we do not give tax or legal advice. These are observations. These are ideas for you to consider. We're not implying everybody go out and do a backdoor Roth. The simple version, a very, very simple version of high net worth earners, they have too much income to be eligible for a Roth. They have too much income for a traditional IRA. You can actually put money into a traditional IRA that would be non-deductible because your income's too high. And they're saying you can put money in there, but your income's too high. You don't need this IRA. So you can't deduct what you put in there. So there is a way. The backdoor Roth, in its simplest version, is to put a non-deductible contribution into an IRA and then move that into a Roth almost simultaneously. It gets very tricky, though. There is something called the pro rata rule. The pro rata rule says that if you're moving money out of a traditional IRA and putting it into a Roth IRA, that's a Roth conversion is what a lot of people term it, that you've got to do it as a percentage of how much you have in traditional versus Roth. So in its cleanest version, you have nothing in a traditional IRA and you have nothing in a Roth IRA. You do a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA, and that non-deductible contribution is the only thing in that traditional IRA. And then you move that money into a Roth IRA. That's called the backdoor Roth. However, you got to be very careful on this, and this is where you want to get your qualified tax preparer involved. If you have a bunch of money in a traditional IRA already, and you do a non-deductible contribution into a bigger IRA and then move that to a Roth, only a portion of that on the way over is going to be non-taxable. Because if you do the pure Roth conversion, non-deductible goes in, then it goes to the Roth, and potentially no tax consequence in that pure form. However, you do a non-deductible contribution into a big traditional IRA, only a portion of what you're taking and moving into that Roth would be considered not taxable at that point. So you got to be very careful about that. And you really want, that's why we prefer to work in a team with your tax preparer, your legal guidance. We all, work together at our client's guidance and say, okay, what you're doing over there affects what we do here. What we do here affects you over there. So that's a very important concept. So a backdoor Roth is relatively simple if you've got nothing in a traditional IRA. But if you already have a traditional IRA, it gets a little more complicated, but still becomes a viable way for a high income earner. Hey, I can't get money into a Roth. My income's too high. But there might be a way for you to do that. So that was the post on Wednesday. Thursday was I call it OB3, the one big, beautiful bill. signed July 4th, 2025 this year. Sweeping changes. Again, every Thursday we're putting out a social post on that. That's going to be on LinkedIn. That's going to be on Facebook. This was about qualified business income deduction. So there are certain pass-through businesses that possibly really got to get the tax preparer involved in this one. So these pass-through businesses, there is the possibility that 20% of your income could be a deduction. That has been the case and would continue to be the case. That could be and has been and can continue to be wonderfully beneficial to business owners. David, any thoughts on QBIs? QBID, qualified business income deduction.
Obviously worth the effort to investigate and work closely with your tax preparer and decide, you knock on the door and you open it up to take a look and go as far as it'll lead you. I don't know about you, but we can't keep Uncle Sam out of our pockets, but we can sometimes limit what he takes out.
Absolutely. A lot of these posts can be found on our webpage, hpkprovident.com. And then if you go over here to resources and down to the blog, or you can find those on social media as well. So that's kind of where to find that. By the way, just on another note, right here, let me get my mouse working. So if you go to hpkprovident.com, not only can you learn about us, this is our financial planning process that I often talk about. But if you take a look at this, you can actually contact us right here. Yeah, let me get over to that section. We've got two screens going right here. You can contact us. There is actually a way to securely upload documents to us. So you can contact us through hpkprovident.com. Send us an email if you have questions. If you're seeing things that we're talking about and say, could you please expand on that? If you have questions about things that you're seeing in the markets, if you have questions about things you're seeing in financial planning, you can contact us and say, hey, would you address that for me on the next Friday Live? Because we do this every Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook. So you can contact us.
I'm sorry, Brian, but I wanted to say we're very fortunate to have a chartered financial analyst as one of our partners. If you have a large position, a concentrated position in one stock, and want to know about that stock, you have the ability to contact us, and we might be able to get you in touch with Michael Kutch, who can do some research on that concentrated position, and we could provide you some recommendations on strategies on what to do with that.
Yeah, we see that on a fairly regular basis. Somebody comes in, they get company stock either through some sort of awards that they get, at the company they're working at. Maybe they inherited a particular company stock from a family member, and it becomes a large percentage of what they have overall. And maybe it's done fantastic. Hopefully it has done fantastic. Challenge becomes that if it doesn't do well, and it's a large percentage of what you hold, that kind of starts to bring everything down in lockstep, potentially, if it doesn't do well. If it has done exceptionally well, then you possibly have a capital gain issue, right? This is what you got it at, whether it's from your company or you bought it or you inherited. This is what you got it at. This is where it's at now. If I sell it all now, possibly a lot of capital gains. There are things to do in that regard. So not only look to see if that's an appropriate investment for you, that's where Mike would come in and say, hey, this is kind of what we know. We'll kind of take a look, give our thoughts on that. And then in the bigger picture, does it fit in with what you're trying to accomplish? Does it fit in with your goals and your values and what you want to accomplish? So that's the kind of thing that we can certainly do there. But yeah, you can contact us right on our website. Also, right below there, in a similar way, kind of staying with that example, if you say, hey, I want you to take a look at this, you can securely upload a statement or whatever information you have to us, and we can take a look at that. So that's all available on our website. So you've got the blog posts and you've got ways to contact us right there. In the contact us as well, you can find our calendar and you can book something online, either via phone call, Zoom, or in person if you prefer.
And if I could interrupt again, Brian, to say, wow, we have at our disposal an expert on Social Security, and then, namely Brian Peluso, who's gone around the country teaching even advisors how to implement Social Security strategies and work in with their clients. Brian is a plethora of information on Social Security, and since that makes up a great deal of many people's retirement, it makes sense to take time to explore that very important topic. And we're happy to say that we have a webinar that Brian and Mike are going to be doing on September 24th. Brian, you want to speak more about that webinar?
Yeah, so that's going to be on September 24th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find that on our, actually, I'll go back to our website right here. And if we go into events, and so along the top, you go into events and you can get some of the details on that right here, and you can register for that as well. But if you think Social Security is, hey, it's pretty simple, take it now, take it later, there's nothing I can do about it, there's really no other thought than whether I take it now or take it later. If that is your opinion, then you really should contact us. If your opinion is, I need to collect Social Security as soon as possible because it's going away, and I prefer to get a few checks before it goes to zero, then no checks ever, and so I need to get it as soon as it's available to me, then you should call us, because there are a lot of ways to kind of going to the title of our webinar on September 24th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There are a lot of ways that you can maximize it for you. You know, everything I get is very simple. If I take it now and I live to be 86 years old, if I take it at 67 and I live to be 86 years old, I should have taken it at XYZ time. That is the very beginning of the Social Security planning. And to David's point, most people will say, well, my retirement account and my house are going to be the largest assets I ever have. If you live a reasonable life and reasonable, based on government expectations, life expectancies, and that type of thing, it is very possible that what you collect out of Social Security throughout that lifetime could be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, pot of money you have in your life. And so to be dismissive of that, either by saying it's going away, don't worry about it, take it now, take it later, it's not that hard. If you're going to be dismissive of that, contact us. Let us kind of walk you through how you can begin to control when and how much you get in Social Security. So, yeah. That's a great plug, David. You got me started on Social Security. Anybody that watches us on a regular basis is rolling their eyes and like, they got Brian wound up on that. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's one of my favorite topics, and it makes a difference. That's why it's one of my favorite topics. It's applicable to just about everybody, and it makes a huge difference. So jump on that webinar, September 24th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to do my very best, David, to condense it into the highlight.
One thing about Brian, he's a great fisherman. He loves being in the weeds.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. All right, we are going to conclude Friday Live for September 12th, 2025. David, any final comments or thoughts?
Yes. Take heart, my friends. Take heart. We saw a tremendous travesty of the assassination with Charlie Kirk. I don't care what side of the aisle you are. taking a human life because of a disagreement in ideology or peace is never a solution, is never a good thing. And I was talking to one of our clients yesterday on her birthday. I wanted to wish her a happy birthday. I couldn't uh, because she was so upset about the circumstance between that and the shooting in the school in Colorado, and people doing harm to other people. And she's a strong Christian, and we started talking about, there's a thought that, and you've often heard me say that I take great solace in knowing that God is in control. Okay. And she says, yeah, David, I know that, but is he in charge when something like this happens? Some of you remember where you were when President John F. Kennedy was shot, when Martin Luther King was shot, when 9/11 happened 24 years ago. Those things stick in our mind. Is God in control? I would say yes. Is God in charge? Yes. Something that we need to realize. If you wish, you can read in the end of the Old Testament of the minor prophets, and they often travailed and lamented to God and say, "Oh God, why are evil people succeeding? Why is evil in this world?" And eventually comes down to, yes, you are God. You will put my feet on the high places. Great passage in Habakkuk 2:15 says, even though there's no figs on the trees, no cattle in the fields, no crops and no birds in the air, yet I will rejoice in the Lord God my Savior, who sets my feet like hinds feet, which is type of deer, in hinds feet on the high places. Our solace is in God. And I told my friend here, I used to pray, Lord, may my heart break.
Yeah, it was you
May my
can't.
heart break with the things that break your heart. And there's times I cannot say that prayer. So I am convinced that when we come before the Lord, every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord, and that is going to happen. The knee will bend either voluntarily or involuntarily that he is Lord. Take solace, my friends. God is in control and he is in charge.
Well, thank you, David. That is extraordinary perspective on a really difficult time. And so I'm going to conclude with this before we get into the only other more sobering, somber topic that we could cover at this point, which is our disclosures. I saw something on social media that really affected me, and so I can't take credit for it, but it essentially said that Charlie Kirk was shot not because of what he said, but because our children were listening. All right, so we are going to conclude right here. David, thank you for your time. This is very important information. I want you to recognize securities are offered through LPL Financial, a member of FINRA and SIPC Advisory Services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Brian and David are registered representatives of LPL Financial. The content discussed is for informational purposes only, not intended to offer as an offer or a solicitation to buy or sell any security or investment strategy. Our opinions expressed here are of us and not necessarily of LPL Financial and its affiliates. All investments involve risk, including the possibility of loss of principal. This communication, Friday Live, may include links or references to third-party websites. These links are provided as convenience. LPL Financial and its representative is not responsible for the accuracy or the content. But I can say that LPL does monitor our website on a regular basis, and we try to keep it as up to date and as accurate as possible. Brian and David are an HPK Provident Advisors, may only transact business in states where they're properly registered or exempt from registration. Please contact us directly on the website if you'd like for information regarding licensing and registration. Past performance is not indicative of future results. You should consult with your financial advisor, hopefully us, tax professional or attorney regarding your specific situation before making any decisions. David, I thank you again for wonderful perspective. Everybody have an excellent, a thoughtful, and if this is you, a prayerful weekend. Thanks much.